All right. Looks like we're good.
Yeah, alrighty.
Hey guys, welcome to Hot Topic Tuesday after an awesome holiday weekend. Coach Trish here and Coach April. So hopefully everyone had a great, awesome 4th of July if you're in the US. Everyone stayed safe. Everyone has all their fingers and toes this morning if you set off any fireworks. So today we're gonna keep it pretty quick, but we want to talk about intermittent fasting and kind of the methods behind that, kind of the different types that you may have heard. And then we're going to touch on some of the pros and cons, and more specifically to women, and women in perimenopause, like that kind of age group. Like, what are the kind of more best methods for us? Kind of bring it back to who most of our clientele is. So intermittent fasting, I kind of tend to prefer to it more. We both kind of like time restricted feeding. Those are interchangeable. But where we used to think a lot of intermittent fasting as the method where you wouldn't eat till like super late in the day, we definitely tend to use more of that time restricted feeding terminology these days, because that is, kind of saying that you're just having a fasting window and a feeding window, and you're kind of just picking the times of both, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're like not eating till 12 or 1 p.m. And I kind of feel like that's where intermittent fasting kind of started with, or that's what I knew of it. I'm like, oh, intermittent fasting, when it first came out, most people were just skipping breakfast and not eating anything till like 11, 12, 1 p.m., sometimes a little later. And we've realized, and April will touch on this more when we kind of get to the pros and cons, but we realize, especially for women, that isn't always the best method. So I tend to kind of look at it as more of this time restricted feeding. And what that means is you have a feeding window and you have a fasting window. So very, very simple. And most of the time, fasting windows are, about 12 hours. That's usually where we'd kind of tell somebody to start with. You can extend those out a little bit longer, and you can actually even make those shorter if this is kind of something new to you and you want to do a little bit of a shorter window, that's fine too. And I think in terms of why we tend to use the time restricted feeding a little bit more is because as we've kind of evolved with the, whole mindset shift with women not doing as well with it, we usually do better with some calories in the morning time. So we tend to kind of look at it like maybe if somebody could do like an 8 to 6 p.m. window, something like that. We also realize as circadian style eating has gotten a little bit more, now I don't want to say popular, because it's a very science tried and true method. There's a lot of studies behind it, but it does seem to be a little bit more beneficial for our bodies. And as far as women, again, kind of starting eating a little bit earlier, but also for digestion and overall health and sleep, it is better to stop eating, about 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. So time restricted feeding kind of allows us to set a window where it's benefiting our body the most, eating a little bit in the morning here, but then also cutting off that food a little bit earlier in the nighttime so that we are digesting really well. We're not, having a lot of reflux or issues like that going to bed. And it does usually help sleep because we're not, having like a glucose spike in the middle of the night or anything like that. So, we kind of tend to look at eating windows maybe starting a little bit earlier in the day and kind of ending a little bit earlier in the evening as being, probably the most beneficial to our bodies. And April will probably go into a little bit more of that when she gets to kind of more the pros and cons. So different, methods you can do are definitely more that time restricted feeding window. And you kind of do have to go a little bit with like what works with your schedule. If you get up and really early in the morning, you might need to start that window a little bit earlier, and maybe kind of cut it off a little bit earlier in the evening, or vice versa. You can, push that back just a little bit. You do want to probably try to get something in your body a good hour or so after you wake up, though. Just that helps cortisol, that helps, stabilize, hormones for the day. It just kind of puts us in a little bit better position moving along there. Another benefit I see of eating earlier in the day and kind of tapering off by evening is I have never ever had a client eat more in like the morning time and maybe, kind of through lunch and feel horrible doing that. Most people feel so much better, by kind of doing that that triangle where you're eating more in the morning and kind of tapering off by the evening. And it usually helps mitigate those evening kind of snacky experiences that we all have because they are fuller, more satiated, getting good calories and nutrients in the day. And also, another benefit I see is that a lot of times, if we're going to be kind of getting into some of the foods we maybe don't want to, it rarely happens in the morning time. Usually we wake up and we're, really craving good savory foods, good nutritious foods, good starchy carbs, that type of thing. It usually tends towards the evening time that we're kind of staring down those snack foods a little bit more. So I see lots of great benefits for starting that eating window a little bit earlier and then cutting it off a little bit earlier in the evening too. Another method that people can do, I know sometimes we'll ask people, how do you evolve intermittent fasting? Our bodies can adapt to it, like it adapts to everything else. Like even if you're tracking macros or calories, we may need to make adjustments to that as we go along. And one way that you can evolve the time restricted feeding is by just increasing your fasting window. So if you're starting with something like a 12-hour fast, you can, one method we really love is doing one longer extended fasting period during the week instead of making it really awful on yourself and doing that all the time. So that's a way that you can kind of like mix things up and get your body to kind of, not adapt to that. Is you could do one day where you're doing more like a 16-hour fasting window, or maybe 2 days where you're doing a little bit longer. And that would kind of be about the same method if you were tracking calories or macros, that you would have maybe a couple lower calorie days in your week. So it's kind of works out to be the same thing. If you increase that fasting window, that's obviously shortening the time that you're actually eating. So you're probably going to be taking in a little bit less calories during that time. And you can do time restricted feeding, intermittent fasting as you're tracking macros and calories too. Um, we have people do both. Sometimes they are using that in conjunction with tracking food and calories just to get a really good idea of what they're eating still. But we also have a lot of people that are using this as their method to kind of control their calories. And, that's why we might make adjustments to that fasting window, to keep that stimulus kind of going. So those are a couple different ways that you can kind of think about doing that. Um, did I get everything with the types kind of?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. So, so essentially, intermittent fasting is just a period of time where you are not consuming calories.
Yeah.
We are giving our digestive system a break, like just all of our systems, everything is taking a break from, from breaking down food, digesting, utilizing energy, all of that. So that's basically what it is. Like Trish said, I personally think that everyone would benefit from at least a 12-hour fast period, like 12 hours. That could be a matter of, if you eat your last meal at 7 p.m., you're not eating again until 7 a.m., because I think that just the 12 hours is beneficial to, just giving our digestive tract, a break, from having to digest food, because surprisingly enough, the whole process of breaking down digesting food actually exerts a lot of energy. And like what Trish said, women tend to women, perimenopause women, and even menstruating women, we tend to do better with more of the circadian eating pattern of eating to support cortisol. So eating some starchy carbs early in the morning to kind of help bring the cortisol down, and then maybe having some carbs around your workouts, but then cutting off the last meal of the day um, earlier in the day, and then that way we have enough time for our body to digest that food, and we're not getting that glucose crash in the middle of the night, which usually results in us waking up. But it can help tremendously in regards to that. So pros and cons. So pros are oh, I do want to add in the, like what Trish said, start out small and then gradually build up. I've had a lot of success with some of my clients and what I do is I kind of look at their lifestyle. I kind of look at their exercise, their training, and their mindset. If I know that they may have unhealthy relationship with food, I may not even bring up intermittent fasting. because I do personally think that it can create an unhealthy relationship with food for some people. Um, and that is more along the lines of if you are following a strict eating window of okay, I'm doing a 16-hour fast and I'm not eating until 12 p.m. every day, but yet 9 a.m. you're hungry and you're like, eating your fingernails and staring at the clock and your head hurts, your head hurts because you have, a glucose crash, like you might want to stop, like listen to your body and eat some food. The big thing that I try to personally stress is I want you to use it as a tool and not a rule. So using it as a tool but more so listening to your body, so listen to your body and is it true hunger? Like, is your head hurting? Are you exercising first thing in the morning? There's a lot of different factors. So that is one thing, but one of the methods that I've been utilizing is like what Trish said, the one longer fast a week, but it's actually, and it's just one a week, but it is a longer fast and it's more closer to a 24-hour fast, and it's not as bad as it sounds. Um,
No, they
it is
really
kind
are. Yeah.
it's kind of like today you would eat like normal breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then you cut off your food, you go to bed tonight, and then tomorrow you would essentially fast and not eat until dinner. And then at dinner, you would eat a normal sized dinner till you're full, just a mindful meal, eat till you're full, stop eating, go to bed, get up the next day, then you pick up like normal. And just that in itself would kind of
Mhm.
create benefits just from having the fasting window, but also if you are attempting to utilize it for a caloric deficit. And like what Trish said, that's one of the pros about it is, and I personally, I moved this way down on the list of the pros, because specifically it's really, really good if you have any issues with insulin resistance, blood sugar regulation, like intermittent fasting can be super, super beneficial, like very, very beneficial. So that is actually one of the primary reasons why I would suggest it with a client is if I know or I've done testing and I've seen that they have, indicators of insulin resistance, then some form of intermittent fasting has been very, very helpful. But further down on the list, if they're attempting to go through, a say like a fat loss phase and they're attempting to reduce their caloric intake, having a fasting window, not only the, primary benefits that we talked about, but also it is easier to manage less calories in a shorter time window. Um, the negatives that I see are, I would say the big thing, the negatives are specifically is when people are trying to push the envelope and they go from 12 hours 14 hours and they're trying to push it further and further and further, but yet their body is basically screaming at them, their head's hurting, they're lethargic, they feel like they need to take a nap, like that is a negative. That is when you're doing too much. But also if you are doing any type of strenuous activity first thing in the morning, you would not want to say do like a resistance training workout or say go run 6 miles and then not eat for 4 hours. Like that
Mhm.
just makes no sense. Like don't do that. Like that just don't do that. I just want to say it. You're basically you're spinning your wheel. It's like you're spinning your wheels in the mud, when you do that. Like you're going and doing this exercise and you know, you're trying to build muscle mass and you're working against yourself in that aspect, so that would be a negative. So don't try to push the envelope in that aspect. Um and the last one would be attempting to eat a certain amount of calories, but then you've shortened up your eating window so small, and say for example, let's say you're trying to eat 2,500 calories in 6 hours. That could be difficult with eating nutritious, wholesome based foods like we suggest. Like we are not opposed to treats and flexible foods, but we do not promote those on a daily basis. Like those are special occasion, type things. And being able to eat wholesome, balanced meals and eat a large amount of calories in a shorter time window is pretty difficult. So kind of keep that in mind. And I will say for some people I've seen, like if they struggle with some aspects of digestion, like they like stomach acid. Eating those larger meals at a time can actually make you feel bad. So it can actually hinder digestion. So be mindful of that. And we talked about this the other week, and I think we talked about it on our Facebook Live. But if you eat a meal and after the meal you feel like you need to take a nap or you're not feeling energized, that is an indicator something is wrong. Like you should feel energized and you should feel energized and you should feel good after eating, a meal. And if you're not, then you need to look at what you're eating and, maybe the balance of the things that you're eating. Also, so um, I will say specifically in regards to women, like we mentioned, the eating first thing in the morning to kind of help support bring down cortisol. Also, for menstruating women, the couple of days around ovulation, I would suggest not pushing the fast. Our body tends to be kind of stressed out a little bit. So during periods of time where your body's stressed out, say like you're short on sleep, you're going through, some big major stressful event, you're going through some rigorous training, whatever the case may be, like that is an indicator that you probably do not want to add more stress on your body. And fasting for long periods of time can be an added stress on your body. So around the couple of days around ovulation, and then also the week leading into your menstrual cycle, when estrogen has kind of plummeted, progesterone's at its all-time high, and that is when we tend to feel sluggish. And we all know the PMS, like we've got the blues, we're feeling sluggish. All we want to do is lay on the couch and eat some potato chips. Like it's all we want to do. That is the time where pushing intermittent fasting may not be a good idea. But I will say, like what Trish suggested in the beginning, eating in the morning and then just eating an early dinner and going to bed. Not only will that help mitigate the mindless snacking that some of us tend to do, myself included. But it will help, with digestion and will help with that blood sugar control. But anyway, if y'all
And I
have
think all those methods too, like what would, because your body will adapt to it, So
any,
kind of everything that April just said, like if you need to shorten that window or increase the window, whatever, around like period and stuff, that does like mixing it up a little bit. That's like one
yes,
thing. We would do that again if we're calorie, controlling somebody or whatever by, getting the body not to adapt so strongly because it
exactly.
would adapt to that too.
Exactly. But again, just the last reminder is, like I said, you want to take a step back and look at everything as a tool and not a rule. So don't set rules on what you're attempting to do and just use it as a tool, but make sure that you're listening to your body. But we're interested to see if you do try it out or if you have tried it, what works best for you. And if y'all have any questions or comments, just post on the video and we will see y'all next week. Bye everyone.